And while we are reviewing a game, we're still going to employ the services of one Greg Cosell, senior producer from NFL Films. Greg, we're usually previewing a Bills matchup. We are reviewing a Bills matchup, so a little bit of a different take here. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the opening possession by the Bills. 10-play drive, and it's pretty balanced. I mean, yes, Allen has a couple of scrambles, which I guess you could argue are probably passes, at the outset. But pretty balanced out of the gate there, and they march right down the field. And I thought the run game, while if you look at the final stat sheet, wasn't all that productive from a yards per carry average, I thought it was effective in at least keeping the Saints honest last night as Josh threw just about everything and almost nothing hit the ground yesterday.
Yeah, well, they had a 10-play touchdown drive. 7 of the 10 plays were called runs. The 2 Allen plays were called runs. So, and they also featured base personnel. So, yeah, they're clearly making an effort to run the ball with both some volume, and obviously they want production, and it's important to do that. And I think we see why every week, because their O-line is not a great pass protecting O-line. That could also be another reason why the pass game, guys, has become somewhat condensed, because they just don't feel really comfortable with deeper drops. Every team will try shot plays here and there, but this pass game has been pretty condensed. The ball comes out quick. They do a real nice job in the short to intermediate areas. But the run game, I agree with you, Chris. I mean, while the numbers might not have looked, beautiful on a sheet of paper, I thought they did some good things. And they started with Breida, as you guys know. And I think they focused a lot of what they did based on him, because they got him outside pull schemes, center tackle pull, pin pull, outside zone, toss. It was both under center. It was with Allen in the gun. So clearly, I think they tailored their run game to the specific back.
What benefit have the Bills gotten, if any, from a defensive adjustment standpoint from the teams that are playing the Bills? What benefit have the Bills gotten by going heavier with a fullback, the tight ends, the extra offensive linemen? They did that a lot more. They've done a lot more of late. What benefit are they getting from that?
It's funny you ask. I was very conscious of looking at that, watching the tape this morning. I don't think they're getting a big benefit yet. And the point is, you have to keep doing it to start getting the benefit, Steve, because the Saints did play an awful lot of shell coverage. And I think teams are not yet ready to say that this run game is something we really have to game plan for. But in an ideal world, you hope to continue doing this and at least have enough of a meaningful run game that teams may think, hey, you know what? They're going to run the ball. And maybe we do want to bring up a safety. Maybe we do want to play a different way and not just think that, hey, the run game's not that relevant in how they play or not that productive. So we'll see. But the Saints didn't really, again, just from looking at the tape, I don't think they felt like they had to stop the run game. But clearly the run game was a factor. And, I've always believed the run game, sure, you want to run for a lot of yards, but I still come back to what Brandon Staley said 4 or 5 weeks ago. I think the run game is really important to make the game physical, to make the defense have to come up and tackle. I just think it's important for a number of reasons, and I think they have to keep doing it.
On the defensive side of the ball for Buffalo, Ed Oliver has had a pretty strong month. He's had maybe his longest stretch of consistent play in a Bills uniform. And he was noticeable again last night. I mean, even on some of the plays that Addison finished, he was responsible for spilling to him.
Right.
Just maybe talk about his penetration ability. I mean, they didn't have an answer for him.
No. He's consistently shown outstanding quickness off the ball this season. And the Bills are a predominant over front. And what we mean, I know you guys know what that means, but that means they line up with their D-line shifted to the strong side of the offensive formation. So when Oliver is the 3 technique to that side, okay, that means to the tight end side, he is extremely hard for tackles to execute reach blocks against him when the run goes to the weak side. He's just too quick off the ball. I thought he also flashed some outstanding hand quickness as a pass rusher. I thought his sack in the second quarter was a great example of that. And overall, I thought the Bills' front four was the dominant unit versus the Saints' O-line in this game. Now, we know that the Saints were missing a few normal starters, but hey, this is the NFL. That's the way it works. But the Bills' front four was clearly dominant. You know what play really stood out to me, guys? You talk about Oliver, Chris?
Yeah.
If you think back a week, which I know Bills fans don't really want to think back a week, but the Colts killed them with what I call wham trap. I think they ran it 4 times, and they just killed them with it, including one of the touchdowns by Taylor in the tight red zone. But they also had some longer runs with it. The Saints ran wham trap in the high red zone late in the third quarter, and Oliver was so quick off the ball, he beat the trap block, and he forced Jones to bounce it outside. And that quickness was just, I mean, watching it on tape, because I didn't really notice it live. Watching last night. So when I saw it on tape, I was like, wow, that was incredibly quick off the ball.
Yeah, and I think the fact that they're getting that kind of production from upstairs. Did you see any? They activated Anku, they activated F.A. Obada. They rotate those guys through at a high rate. Is that still continuing to be effective in your mind? Or is there a combination that they try to put out there in crucial downs to make sure they have, an A squad and a B squad or whatever? Or is it more random than that? Do they have different combinations they run through there? How do you see their defensive line rotation working out? Is it effective?
One thing I did notice, and this was the only thing I specifically noticed, was that Anku and Bryant seemed to play together inside.
Yeah.
But beyond that, I didn't necessarily take note. I will say this. I think as I watch this defense, and again, it's no knock on any particular player, but I think there's 4 guys to me that really kind of, and let's put Oliver aside for a moment. He's playing at a really high level, but let's put him aside for a moment. I think there's 4 guys that really make this defense work, and this defense is playing really well. I think the safeties, Poyer and Hyde, are critical to this defense. I think Milano, and he made a lot of good plays last night, Milano. Yeah. I just think and I've been talking about him for 3 years, as you guys know.
Right.
And I think the slot corner Johnson is really important. This team has not played a snap of base defense in weeks. They've been 100% nickel. What is it, for something like 3 weeks in a row now, Chris? You might know that exactly.
Yeah, the Titans game in week 6 is the last time they played base with 3 linebackers on the field, and it was sparingly.
Right. So, I mean, if you're going to do that, your slot corner has to be more than just what we think of as a slot corner, a guy who's covers slot receivers. I mean, you have to feel really good, because he essentially becomes a Sam linebacker.
Right.
Depending on what the offensive formation is. And I think Johnson, you guys remember, I talked about him last year. Remember about midseason, I said, I thought he was a really good player. They obviously think so too, because they paid him, and they play him every single snap. So I think he is absolutely critical to this defense.
It was interesting because after last week's game, Leslie Frazier was asked, with the way Jonathan Taylor was running your team over, did you ever think about putting base defense on the field?
Right.
He said no. And when somebody said, well, why not? Why wouldn't you put a bigger body out there? He said, because we were putting 8 in the box, and if we can't stop the run with 8 in the box, it's not because of who we have out there. It's because of how they are playing. It was his opinion that it was a gap integrity and a fundamental tackling issue, not a personnel grouping issue. That's how much they think of Taron Johnson. So,
and I think, look, we're in an era where there's a lot of good slot corners in this league right now, and they play an awful lot of snaps. Not as much as the Bills, who play more nickel than any team in the league, but there's a lot of teams that play a lot of nickel. And, as you guys know, a slot corner, number one, he has to be able to play the run. He has to be able to blitz at times, which Johnson does as well. And then you have to be able to play both man and zone coverage. I think Johnson can cover those 4 bases at a pretty good level. I think he's a really good player.
Yeah, and I would agree. And I think that's one of the things that gets lost in this, because he's not like I mean, he's not like the Legion of Boom where he's a 6'4".
He's not Cam
215.
Chancellor.
Yeah, he's not Cam Chancellor or even, Richard Sherman or any of those. He's a 5'10", $190 guy, right? So I think that's the surprising thing is his ability to stand up to the punishment that he may or may not get at,
And
coming
he's
up to be
super
the,
competitive against the run.
Right.
I mean, you guys see, when he attacks in the run game, I mean, he sticks his nose right in there. He's not one of those corners guys that shies away from trying to tackle in the run game.
What kind of difference did you see Tremaine Edmunds make yesterday in the Saints game? To me, I noticed him yesterday more than I had in other games before that. He was out for a couple of games, and him coming back, I thought, wow, he's around the ball a lot more than I remember him being in the first 6 games.
Yeah, he was. I noticed that too. And it's funny. He didn't make. I don't know what the tackle numbers were. You guys might have that info right in front of you. I don't remember him making a ton of tackles, but I remember him being involved right in the middle of the plays. Look, I believe that Edmunds and Milano are they're one of the best. Obviously you could start going through nickel linebacker duos in the league, and there's a lot of good ones, but I think they're among the best nickel linebacker duos in the NFL. And they're different kinds of players. They normally don't ask Edmunds very often to match up to tight ends. That's normally what Milano does, or one of the safeties, depending on how they want to play it. But Edmunds is a long, big body with great speed, and he in the box, because he's so big, he navigates ground really effectively. Again, I don't have tackle numbers in front of me, but you're right, Steve. He was every running play, it seemed like, well, there's Edmunds. Even if he didn't make the tackle, he was right there.
Yeah, they both tied. Milano and Edmunds tied for the team lead with 8 tackles each. So they were active and effective. Right. Dion Dawkins, Greg, had some struggles last night. I'm trying to ascertain what the main issue for him is, because his play has been inconsistent this season.
And
there was one play in particular, Greg, and knowing you kind of combed through the film, I'm curious for your take on this. There was one particular play where the defensive end, he tried to jump set him. Dion tried to jump set the defensive end, but the defensive end's first step was inside, almost like reducing down at the snap.
Right.
As soon as you jump set, the play's over already. He can't recover in time, and now he's giving up an inside pressure, and Josh has to go run for his life. Is there something about his approach to opponents that is impacting him, at the snap? It's almost like he's losing so quickly. I'm wondering if his pre-snap approach is flawed.
Yeah, and I'm not a cop-out. I can't speak to that. I don't feel like I know quite enough about that, but I think you're right. I think that he has been very inconsistent throughout this season. It's one of the reasons I believe that they can't take that pass approach, because we've discussed this, and I've discussed it elsewhere. People forget about the offensive line when they think about a team throwing so much. They only talk about the quarterback. But, you're asking your offensive line to pass protect 40, 45 times a game. That's a hard deal. Okay. You could still argue that the biggest mismatch in the NFL is offensive line versus the quality of pass rushers that are out there. And the quality of pass rushers coming from college are only getting more athletic. And not that offensive linemen aren't getting more athletic, some are, but it's still the biggest mismatch on the field. So people forget about that. But I agree with you, Chris. I don't think Dawkins has been really good on a week-to-week basis, and he would be viewed as their best O-lineman. And, I think it's been a little bit of a struggle for him.
Well, even with the game last night in New Orleans, even the most ardent Buffalo Bills fans, while we're all happy with a 31-6 win, a decisive victory, let me ask you this, and I don't know how well you can speak to it or how much you want to say about it, but give us a real scoop. How bad were the Saints? I mean, they are nicked up. They've got nobody playing. Their left tackle and his replacement are down. Kamara's out. Ingram is out. Taysom Hill is out. All these guys are out. How undermanned can you sense that the Saints were last night playing against the Bills?
Yeah, I think offensively the Saints are bad right now, because Simeon was bad last night too. He missed a number of throws that he has to make. Because normally Simeon is a guy you can line up and play with. Obviously, he's not good enough to be a full-time starter, but the last couple of weeks, he's been bad. And he missed too many routine layup throws last night. So offensively, they're bad. On the offensive line, they are playing with some backups, and their O-line got handled last night. But defensively, they're playing with very few exceptions. I mean, I know Davenport was out, but defensively, they played with their group. And, I thought the Bills did a really good job. I thought the Bills did a really good job situationally, too. And a lot of games come down to situations. I thought that the Davis 26-yarder on 3rd and 2 on the third possession was a really good call.
Yeah, play action.
You could almost argue that the Knox 24-yard touchdown on 4th and 2 was the same play concept as the Davis 26-yarder, just with different people from a different formation. So, I thought they did a really good job in those kinds of situations. And we know situational football is so critical on both sides of the ball.
And then, the last couple of weeks, Matt Breida.
Yep.
He's the 2 games prior to this, touched the ball 12 times, 117 yards and 2 touchdowns. He gets more work last night, not a tremendous amount more, but again, he's providing a spark. I mean, Greg, screen passes have been a monumental problem for this team to execute with any measure of effectiveness. He takes a traditional screen pass, 23 yards for a touchdown.
And it wasn't overly well blocked, by the way. He made that a touchdown. So, see, the thing about Breida, ultimately, that you like, which is different from Singletary and Moss, is that Breida at least has some juice. Breida can turn, a short run into a long run simply because he's got some juice to him. And I think they need that right now because their pass game has not really been attacking downfield, either by choice or just because they feel like it's not there, whatever the reason. But I think you'll see more of Breida. And I think you'll see runs that play to his strength. And that's why I mentioned you saw a lot of outside type runs. But here's the screen that we're looking at right now. And, you can see there were 2 defenders who were unblocked right there. And he basically made them miss. So he just adds another element.
Looking at the other games around the NFL yesterday, all 3 road teams won. I don't know if there's a trend there or what you make of that. But what did you see in the Dallas-Oakland game? And, of course, in the Detroit-Chicago game. Anything of note?
Well, I'm in the name of full disclosure, I did not see the early game. I was actually in the office watching tape, Steve, believe it or not. So I did.
Greg.
And then we went to
Greg.
to our
Greg,
dinner.
you're a goner, man.
I know, I'm lost.
You're an
I'm
absolute
lost.
goner.
I get it.
On Thanksgiving, he's watching tape.
Yeah, I'm a little lost. So I got home, I didn't get home till about 3:15. I guess I saw their long 18-play drive with the field goal kick, but that was about it. And then we went to our dinner. But I did watch the Dallas offensive tape. And, Dallas is a team right now. They're struggling to run the ball, believe it or not. Last 5 games, they've not been able to run well at all. Their O-line is getting handled. And that, I think people would be surprised to hear that because it's Dallas's O-line, but their O-line is getting handled in the run game. And they're going to need to get that fixed because I really think Dak Prescott has really grown into a really good quarterback. But again, you get caught up and you can't throw the ball, 50 times a game. You just can't play that way in this league.
All right, Greg, listen, we appreciate the insight as always. We will catch up with you next week when we've got a
big one next week, Chris.
We got a very, very big one coming up here, as you well know. Massive. And something tells me it'll be featured on the ESPN NFL Matchup Show. Just a hunch.
My guest tells me it might be our featured game with a full segment, but, I don't want to jump ahead too far.
All right, we look forward to that.
I just go one play at a time, guys. One play at a time.
Talk to your producer. Maybe he'll listen.
Yeah.
That would be me.
I know.
That's right. All right.
When you talk to that guy when you're shaving in the morning, talk to the guy with the razor in his hand. Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. As always, we'll catch up with you next week.
Thanks, guys.